let's hear that.
So what did you say, Chair, if I may, before I'll bring John and Tara in, is that the consultation will run through all the sites that we considered and why we don't think they're suitable, why we think this is... Councillor Sommer, really.
I'm sorry, but
why,
it is...
Okay,
I don't
right.
interrupt you, so let's have a bit of fairness, yeah?
I don't talk nonsense.
We'll run through why this is our preferred location. We'll talk through local residents on through that and listen to what they have to say. But at the end of the day, for me, and to tell my officers to go out there and say, consult on all these options, even though we know that some of them will cost us a huge amount of council housing, will cost this council a huge amount of money over the next 50 to 100 years that could support our services, is completely disingenuous. And that is not the way we run this council. If we've got a course of action that we think is the right one, we'll say this is the course of action we think is the right one. Tell us what you think about it, and we'll try and come up with a solution that mitigates the negative impacts.
Right, come on, let's.
That's telling people what you think.
Is there anything to add? Or?
I was only going to say, Chair, that we have some information and studies that we've carried out on the current physical state of Seven Islands, and we have looked at how we could refurbish it potentially, and we have considered development options. So all that material will come out into the public domain and form part of the consultation.
No, I'm going to move on to. She's very, very patient. I'm going to. Councillor Williams. I'm going to move on to Councillor Dale, who's going to get to ask her question because she's been waiting very patiently. Go ahead, Councillor Dale.
I think there is some confusion here about decisions and consultation and what preferred location means for people, and I think that we've heard that from what people have said today, and I think we do need to acknowledge that in something about how these things are presented to people. But given we are where we are, there is a preferred location being presented, and you do wish to consult with public about that, what I wanted to pick up on was you mentioned that one of the reasons for this location was to do with it being part of the first phase. So I wondered if you could explain a little bit more about the implications of that aspect, please.
Okay. So as with any large development of this nature, it won't all be at once. There'll be the first development phase. And if Miles, who's at the back from Britishland, or anyone else in Britishland, or any other developer for that matter, were here, what they'd say is that they wanted to create the new sense of place. You need to have it around the transport node, and you need to have it of a scale that lets people understand, and people can easily understand what it is we're trying to create and the vision for the area that we're trying to bring about. That naturally brings you to Canada Water Basin, very close to the transport links. It's also predominantly car parks at the moment, which are much more easy to bring forward. There's also the matter of Tesco. Tesco, which take up a huge amount of Surrey Quays shopping centre, they have a lease from British Land. You know, Tesco are going through, I think it'd be fair to say, a difficult time nationally, well, internationally as a business. And whilst their business model sets down, it's very difficult to bring forward that part of the master plan site because of the lease arrangement that they have. And also you then end up with a very disjointed development if you're to bring forward different plots that aren't next to each other, if that makes sense. So the first development site, which will be around the basin and coming down to the site that we're talking about this evening, it needs to be in that area if we're going to get the leisure centre delivered in the next 5 years or so. And the other plots won't come forward for many years to come. So if we want the leisure centre in the next 5 years, we've really got to go somewhere in the area that I described.
Okay.
Can I just ask,
quickly, yeah.
Are we going to be consulting on whether we want the leisure centre in the next 5 years?
So from a council resources point of view, we took the decision last year that rather than spending £8 million on Seven Islands Leisure Centre, which would see it operational for another 10 years.
Oh, sorry, the 8 million.
Yeah, million. So we previously committed to spend £8 million on Seven Islands to keep it going for another 10 years. Because there's the regeneration opportunity with British Land to build a brand new leisure centre in a much quicker time, we felt that would be a waste of public money effectively, and that by spending just £2 million to keep Seven Islands going for the next 5 years, that's £6 million that we can then spend on our school expansions programme and various other things across the borough.
Johnson.
Thank you. I'll keep it snappy. I just wanted to turn the attention to consultation quickly.
Keep talking.
You paragraph 42, you talk about the consultation starting immediately. What kind of timescales do we have on that? And secondly, in terms of following on from Councillor Dale's point, which was that something that we could learn, and by your own admission as well, is that something that we could have learned is the clarification of what this actually means. And so, could you clarify just now, if to hand, how many process of consultation will this decision go through?
So the consultation mentioned in paragraph 42. So the first consultation meeting for the residents immediately affected was scheduled to take place Wednesday of last week, but that was postponed because of the call-in. So we're hoping that, subject to discussion this evening and the recommendations from this committee, that we go forward with the first consultation meeting before the end of this month, and then have the consultation with the wider area very shortly after that, and that will then run through right till the end of the year. That will probably overlap with the next phase of consultation from British Land. And what we've said is if the British Land consultation runs past our consultation, that we'll take any comments that people have even after our consultation's finished, because when people see the British Land master plan and the latest version of that, they'll understand how the leisure centre site fits in with what's planned much better. So obviously the two are inextricably linked. And as I mentioned earlier, and as I've said to everyone that I've met to discuss this, we'll hold as many consultation meetings of as many different varieties, workshops, walkabouts, whatever people want to be able to discuss. No, not until the right answer council somewhere, because we know from our experience that not everyone can make a meeting at 7 o'clock. Sometimes you have to do stuff during the day.
Okay, let's come back to Johnson's question.
So basically, as there'll be this round of consultation from us from now, probably from the end of the month through till about Christmas. There's then the British Land consultation as well. And then there'll be a cabinet report next year that agrees the details of the renegotiation package with British Land. There'll be a consultation period on that cabinet report as there is with any decision taken by the council. And then following that, there'll be a planning application submitted, and there'll be the statutory planning consultation as part of that. So at least 4 rounds of consultation.
And just to clarify, for each stage of planning, there would be another level of it would be just one planning application, I presume, or would it be?
I think the intention is that there's an outline master plan submitted,
okay.
And the detailed first phase, okay, like we did at the Aylesbury.
Yeah.
And the
Okay.
4.
Rebecca.
My question's probably been answered. So
Okay. Thank you.
leave it.
Thank you. Maisie.
Thank you very much. I'll keep it really short. It seems there's 2 issues that we're discussing. One is consulting on whether or not we choose this site, and the other is consulting on what's going to be on the preferred site. And I think maybe these issues have become quite blurred, but to me they're clearly starkly separate. Are we going to build on this site or not? And if we're going to build on this site, what we're going to build? So, what are your duties as a cabinet member? What are our duties as a council with regards to those 2 different sorts of consultation? I mean, in terms of the constitution or the law or good practice, what are our duties consulting on which site you choose as opposed to the other part of consultation, which I think we all understand, especially lots of us that sat on the planning committee, because that's sort of different. But in terms of choosing this preferred site, what are your duties or our duties as a council to consult local residents on this site? That's it really, that's my question.
Okay. So we've got a duty to consult with local residents. We have to take into account a whole range of government legislation, not least the Equality Act, and also undertake full environmental impact assessments of any proposals. And I think whilst the 2 issues are they're distinctly separate of where do you put it, and then if you put it there, what does it look like? I think in this instance they're very closely linked, because I think the final design, wherever it ends up, which is likely to be on this site, will have a huge impact on whether residents can support or object to the proposal. So I think they're separate but very closely linked in this instance. And I think we need to make sure there's adequate time for both of those issues to be fully fleshed out, which is why we wanted to start last week, but that's been delayed, which is fine. So we can kick off at the end of this month, run through to the end of the year, and see where we get to. But that should be adequate time.
Okay, Lisa.
Jay, I'm trying to think of a sort of a way forward for this, because I think we're getting.
Well, we'll move on to that part of it after we've heard back again from residents who may have further questions for. So we're still in. Just questions to the cabinet member at this stage, and then we can move. Is that okay? Okay, great.
Can I have one quick question?
Yep, go ahead.
The British Land basically said this is the only place they'll accept a leisure centre.
No.
So where else would they?
So as I discussed, as I mentioned earlier, Councillor Samarow, we could as a council stamp our feet and say, you know what, we don't want it here, we want it over there. But then through doing that, for example, by putting it closer to the basin and closer into further into the master plan site, that would cost us a huge amount.
They said that.
Yes, that would cost us a huge amount of money and a huge amount of affordable housing.
So just to be really clear, so you've said to British Land, what if we put it here, and they've said that will cost you how much?
So part of the detailed work that we're undertaking as part of this.
There's a process that I could just intervene.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, I mean, we are going through a process whereby we are, as officers, negotiating with British Land based on the decision that Cabinet took in November 2014 and the principles that are set out there. That's quite a complex set of financial discussions and negotiations. I think from an officer point of view, what is difficult in all this is that we can't as officers just put a site into British Land's master plan. It would look very odd, I think, if one day there was a British Land consultation and a site for a leisure centre suddenly appeared in it. If it hadn't been, if it hadn't, if it hadn't been through a process through our constitution to get to that point.
So why can't we choose a site that suits?
Is
actually what residents want?
Sorry, I hadn't fully finished my response.
I wasn't understanding what you were saying.
And through that negotiation process, clearly, where the leisure centre go has implications for that. So there are choices to be made within it, and Mark answered that correctly, but they do have significant financial implications and have a bearing on how we test that judgment and decision through things like section 123 and best value consideration. Those are matters that we're going to have to advise Cabinet on when we go to the meeting on in October, when we hope to take heads of terms paper to them at that point in time. But we need to make this decision on the site now, so that the work that British Land are doing in tandem can continue around that master plan. Otherwise, we're in a kind of very difficult situation.
I want to come to the
process.
people that have come along tonight, representatives of whom have come and spoken to us already, about specifically whether there's arising from the discussion that we've just had, whether or not there are any additional questions that you might want to put to the Cabinet member. So, Tom, I've got you indicating. You go ahead.
I've got just a few very few word answers, I suspect. Is there evidence for the call that their number of visits will go from 160,000 to 400,000, despite Elephant and Castle also opening a leisure centre? Is there evidence for that?
Okay, let's take that. Let's take that first.
They were taken from benchmark figures, sort of matched up with other similar leisure facilities. With a growing population in Southwark, we are expecting that a really great leisure facility with policy and free swimming gym
with Elephant and Castle taken account of.
Would actually attract a lot of visitors.
That's okay. And that evidence will be made public, I presume.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. The second one is, will the pool be underground on the new proposed site? It was unclear what you were saying.
So until the IDM, the decision's confirmed, and until the detailed design work can be done, we won't know exactly where anything is, which is one of the reasons why it's really important for this decision to go forward, so that detailed design work can happen.
Is there a chance on this site it will have to be underground in order to fit it in as you wish and prevent it being too high? Tara can maybe answer in a bit more detail, but what we'd want to see happen is the pool, because there'll be two pools, this one and the learner pool, to have natural daylight, and then the sports hall. There's less of a necessity for sports halls to have natural light, because sometimes it can actually be an impediment for people playing racket sports, for example. No, that's, you mentioned 4 metres. I wasn't in order how close it has to be to the TfL infrastructure. Yeah. But I wasn't clear if the proposals put it within that 4 metres.
So until the detailed design work has taken place, we won't know. And just to clarify that if something does come within that 4 metre zone, it doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means you need agreement from TfL for it to happen, and then work out the engineering to make sure that there's no negative impacts on their infrastructure.
Okay, last one, Tom.
It appears to me that
the consultation in November 2014 really was the thing that made the decision to not only not rebuild the current leisure centre, build it. What consultation happened, and if there was unanimous rejection from the public, it's just sounding from what you're saying, that would make absolutely no difference.
So, just to clarify, the decision that was taken by Cabinet in November of last year was to scale down the amount of investment in Seven Islands from 8 million to 2 million for the reason I set out earlier, and authorising officers to enter into negotiations with British Land and to say to British Land, we want a new leisure centre as part of the regeneration package, we're negotiating with you. That decision was in a Cabinet report, and like all Cabinet reports, it's sent to all members of this authority. We publicised it as well, and there was press coverage at the time. And there was we didn't consult specifically as an individual decision, but like all of our Cabinet papers, any decision of this council, there's a period of public representations, and then every member of the authority was informed of that.
Okay, thank you. And anybody else who'd like to? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'll try and make them questions, although I feel there are a few clarifications that have to be made as I go. Personally, I'm not speaking for my group here because I haven't actually discussed this issue with them. I don't really necessarily feel that we should be hived off from the community and dealt with separately in this first level of consultation. And I want to understand why you think that we can deal firstly with the 3 streets most affected and then with the wider consultation. And in fact, as we've heard tonight, there are all sorts of things that are pre-proposed and impacted by this decision effectively already having been made. It strikes us somewhat that you're trying to kind of get the building okayed by the people who are going to be most affected by it, and then get the other people through the door. And actually, I feel that's rather divisive. So I'd be interested to know why you think. I mean, you're probably going to say that it's because we're most affected, therefore we get special treatment. It doesn't feel like special treatment. It feels like a divisive way of going about it.
So just to clarify on that, and obviously we've only got limited time this evening, so happy to take a bit more time for this discussion outside the meeting. And I thought that because of the impact, the very near impact on your properties and your neighbours in Hoffield and Hythe and China Hall Mews, that having a separate consultation meeting where we can discuss things in much more detail at a local level would be the right thing to do, and then very shortly after, a matter of days, have a wider consultation for everybody in the area. And it wouldn't be a case of working up detailed designs with one set of people and then not talking to another set of people. It would be having the same information given to everyone within a matter of days, and then going away and reflecting on all the feedback from both sets of people, and then coming back to everyone with the detailed designs. If you as local residents, and obviously there's a lot of people here this evening, but not everyone that lives in the area, if you've got opportunity and time for your action group to speak to local residents, if you want us to mix it up and have those consultation meetings just open to anyone and everyone, then we'll do that if that's what you want as local residents.
We are actually all here from the local area, and we're talking together as a community.
Yeah,
so
I understand that. You can do that, can't we?
Yeah,
we can make that amendment.
I think this question got answered but not answered, which is at what point, I think Councillor Rajan asked this actually, at what point was this piece of land put in? I mean, you said that you don't wake up one morning and find a leisure centre has suddenly appeared on the master plan. I'm afraid that is exactly what happened. I can tell you why, because I bought my house only in May last year, and we knew about the regeneration plans. We did much research. We looked at every publicly available piece of information, and at that point, the wildlife area was not part of the footprint of the regeneration. So, at what point did that change, and why did that change? It does, unfortunately, look to us like it is the only piece of land that you've been allowed to develop on by British land. It did suddenly appear in the December 2014 master plan, and it has not been. I mean, there's a presumption this land has to be built on, and I would question, does this land actually have to be built on?
No, I understand. So I think it's fair to say that things changed quite significantly when British Land bought the Mass Leisure Centre Park site.
That was afterwards.
They bought the site earlier this year.
Yes, I'm talking about December 2014.
December 2014.
That's last year.
That's when it first appeared.
So the fact the Mass Leisure Centre Park came in led us to have to consider a much wider regeneration area and look at it in it's a much larger site.
No, I'm sorry, I just said that it happened in December 2014 before that happened. So that something changed. It was not communicated correctly at that point. I think we have to be clear that you cannot argue that the community has known that this is the site for the new leisure centre since the 2014 master plan, because British Land have been.
No, sorry, we've never said that. We've never said that.
No.
Okay,
we've
never ever said that. Yeah, so apologies.
So
sorry.
You're standing up at the CWCF on the 6th of July was the first time the community could be sure that was.
So apologies, Catherine. I misunderstood your question. Accept my apologies. So the notice of the IDM was published in July of this year that would be coming forward with our preferred location. Pauline spotted it. It's published on the council's website. I was at the CWCF and mentioned it there. The intention was for the IDM that we're discussing this evening to be published late July. For a number of reasons that slipped back, and then it slipped back through August. So we took the decision early in August, but with our 3-week decision-making time frame has led us to the date where we are now.
So what still doesn't answer my question? That piece of land suddenly get redeveloped when before it wasn't even part of the footprint of the master plan area.
So just to clarify, the parcel of land we're talking about was always part of the master plan area.
No, it wasn't.
In
December of that.
It was in December, but that's the first time the community saw the site, which wasn't explicitly said what was going to happen on that site.
No, exactly. Like all the other plots.
British Land's decision to bring the shopping centre into the redevelopment.
So I think there's a little bit of confusion on a couple of things here. So it was always intended development had come forward at this location. We and John and officers through negotiations.
I think we need to clear this up. Clear the chronology of this is important, and I think that it's certainly we do need to clear that up. Whether or not that has an impact on the debate we're going to have in a moment is another point. I'm not saying it's unimportant, but I think let's get that clarified at a later date. I don't think that's a problem at all. Okay, Pauline, did you have anything?
If we could get that, sorry, Joe, can you just get that question?
Following on from Catherine's point, the AAP figure 24 shows that there is a landscape buffer to Huddersfield Place in residential properties. It's quite clear. And nobody from Southwark, to my knowledge, raised that at the EIP, and I've not seen any change go through the revised AAP, so it still stands, as Catherine says, but that land was never to be developed. Right, so that's just a statement. A couple of questions. Councillor Williams mentioned Albion Street and how well your discussions with TfL were going. As I said in my submission, TfL is a very difficult organisation to deal with. I think you'll find that you're still trying to negotiate with TfL where to put the scaffolding poles to demolish the former library 4 years on. So I don't really think that you are, discussions with TfL move that quickly. So I come back to the point that this site is likely to prove very, very difficult to develop with something like a swimming pool so near to the overground line. But that's a statement. The question I'd like clarification on is you talked about refurbishing Seven Islands. Have you ever had a conversation about demolishing and rebuilding on the Seven Islands site?
So just to pick up your first point, I think the ongoing discussions with TfL about at Albion Street shows that just the level of detail of information that we need, which for those discussions to take place, which is why this decision is so important. On the Seven Islands,
you're saying we're going to build the swimming pool in 5 years. It's taken 4 years to try to demolish the existing library, let alone get anywhere near a planning application.
Well, we'd hope, Pauline, that by the fact that this is in an opportunity area that we're working very closely with TfL, that it won't take 4 years to agree where the scaffolding poles are going to go.
Pauline, let's get the answer to your question first, and then if you've got another one, we can come back.
Just on Seven Islands. We have discussed demolishing Seven Islands and rebuilding the leisure centre there, but as I discussed earlier, a break-in service of several years we didn't think was acceptable for the local area.
So, but as we've said, the Seven Islands site is enormous at the moment. It has a very large internal courtyard and garden. You could do it in 2 stages, exactly the same as Decathlon is doing at the moment. It's demolished one unit and decanted into another one. Doing it. So has that conversation ever been
from a technical and service management point of view, I'll hand over to John and Tara on this one.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Let's so we can hear what you're saying. So,
Basically, we looked at the services we provide there, and we always try to provide over and above in a new facility, taking into account council policy on free swimming gym, growing population in the area. So in terms of baseline requirements, and that's providing a pool that, whilst not 33 metre, would be 8 lane instead of 6 lane, a 10 by 10 learner pool, 3 studios, a 4 courts. When I say courts, I mean badminton courts side by side, sort of size. Onto that footprint of land with all of the supporting services for changing rooms, children's drop-off zone for parents to use. It just wouldn't fit on that site.
Well, underground or higher, the same height.
hang on. Let's hear from Pauline. Just Pauline. It's very difficult if everybody speaks at the same time. Pauline, go on.
The size of the plot, the existing size of the Seven Islands plot, would accommodate the outline spec that you have put forward in the report.
So I think, Chair.
So come back to it. Have you had the conversation that you could rebuild on Seven Islands?
Well,
how much would it cost?
Well, hang on. Let's get the answer. Let's get the answer to the question.
I think as Tara just set out, it isn't possible to fit it on the site, and I think rather than, Chair, if I may, rather than having that discussion here, this is one of the reasons why we need the full public consultation, so that all the sites we consider, which included Seven Islands, can be fully discussed with the maps and all the rest of it, etc. But no, it's not. We did consider it.
Consult with you until they persuaded you it's not possible.
We did consider it. We did discuss it. But it's just not possible to fit on that site everything that we want to provide for the local.
Okay, I'm going to take the last. I'm going to take the last because we do need to move on to make. Pauline, I'm going to stop you there. I'm afraid. I'm going to take one last contribution from the lady at the back there, blonde hair. Last question. Then we're going to move on to debate amongst councillors with regards to recommendations. So go ahead.
We live in Gone Road, so we're coming from that area. Let alone concentrating. You haven't even let anybody know around there, in any part of that. And we can say, not only do I not want to go where you're going to go, I don't want what you're going to propose to build there. We don't even know.
Okay,
and that's
so
a large area. How can you compare the two?
So,
where are you going to put it?
so just to confirm that once the IDM, once this decision we're discussing this evening is confirmed, it allows the full consultation to happen and everyone in the area to be informed and consulted and have it discussed with.
It's a bit late. You just didn't even know anything about it.
Well, that's
the library 2 months ago.
No, indeed. So the decision, and again coming back to my earlier comment, I think this is where the council's constitution can sometimes be less than helpful. Is to enable all this consultation to happen. This decision needs to take place. We could have, and just looking at a point of learning, we should have, in hindsight, written to residents of Gone Road and Musway, etc., informed of the IDM decision, and that's something that we'll remember for the future. But this decision we're discussing this evening will allow that full consultation to happen. Just on the existing Seven Islands site itself, on what will happen to that once the leisure centre's moved, because we've got a number of years, 5 years or so. We've got plenty of time to consider what's going to go on there, but what will be on there is a mixture of new council houses, new intermediate shared ownership houses, and new private houses. Well, yes, because you don't. So no, indeed, because you can build the number of houses on there, all depending on the design that comes forward, and we'll consult on it like we're doing.
Okay, I'm gonna move us on now to the next stage. I think we need to. No, Anoud. I'm going to move us on to the next stage. I'm afraid. No, Anoud.
I answer to 2 questions before I can suggest something.
Okay, quickly. Question.
Firstly, sorry, Mark. What you say you investigated demolishing and rebuild, what was the cost of that? Secondly, paragraph 20 of your report refers to the site in question appearing in December 2014, and it says the site was specifically identified as having potential for community social infrastructure use. What other potential uses were there for it other than a leisure centre in December 2014? Paragraph 20 of your report.
So on the full cost, because we haven't done, so there's the initial assessment that was done by Tara and John's teams about what can and can't fit on Seven Islands. Because we don't think, well, it's not possible to fit on everything we want there, we didn't work up a full spec and figure out how much it was going to cost, because that would be a waste of resources.
And that's really weird, because the November 2014
Anoud,
report
we've
says
got
it's
two
not value
questions
for
from
money.
you. Anoud, we have to move on. So, Mark, answer the questions, please.
So we haven't got a total figure for knocking down and rebuilding 7 Islands on site, because we can't fit on there everything that we need to fit on this. There's no point in doing the full costings.
So value for money wasn't the reason not to stay.
Well, it is value for money, because just expending our resources on it wouldn't be value for money, and it would be very expensive. These things are always very expensive. On for what could be included on the site in appendix 1 was specifically identified as having potential for community/social infrastructure use. I'll just remind you that that was British Land's consultation on their master plan. One of the uses that was considered, which we're talking about this evening, is leisure centre use. What the other potential community uses for that space were, you'd have to ask British Land.
So you don't know?
No. And for our purposes, it's leisure centre.
Okay,
So
right. Okay. So moving on to discussion about recommendations that this committee might make to the cabinet member. I think there's one. I don't think this will be particularly controversial. The point that Catherine made with regard to having the consultation simultaneous, not just with those people who were immediately around the proposed new site, but with the wider area. That sounded like something that you and other local residents would be particularly keen on, Catherine.
Yes, I think the key point is that it's the consultation that actually.
Well, we'll come to that. We'll come to that in a minute. We're going to come to that. So I'm trying to. We'll move this one out of the way, and then we'll come to the trickier issues. So I would propose that we make that recommendation to the cabinet member that consultation takes place simultaneously. Now, moving on to the wider issue, it seems to me that the crux of this issue lies in whether or not the council should consult with or without a preferred site in mind. Now, my personal view is I have no in principle objection to the council entering into a consultation whilst publicly stating that it has a preferred site. I think that's the honest position to take if that is indeed the case, and if they're prepared to make the case for that. Now, and I think there's many examples of this council and lots of other councils going right back to time immemorial where consultations have taken place and a preferred outcome has been expressed at the beginning. Now, what is crucial is that does not stop the consultation from being genuine, and I think that's where we come to the crucial point. So, I don't feel that we should recommend that we remove that preferred site from the consultation, because I've got no particular objection to that based on the arguments that we've heard this evening. But I do think we need to give further reassurance that this consultation is genuine nonetheless. And I'll state now a kind of draft wording, if you like, for a recommendation, and maybe that'll help kick off our discussion. So this would be what I would propose in order to make a recommendation. I'll pass this on to you, Shelley, so in case you need it for the minutes. In order to further reassure, or in order to reassure affected residents regarding the consultation on the proposed new site for the Canada Water Leisure Centre, the Cabinet member should give a public commitment to review the Council's decision to have a preferred site should the consultation receive overwhelming public opposition to that outcome. Now, are people relatively happy with that?
Chair, I did indicate earlier that I had a suggestion.
Yeah, and I'm as chair, I'm getting in there first and making my suggestion. So that would be my suggestion. If there are alternative suggestions, please feel free to make them. Councillor Raja.
I just want to move one step back from your suggestion. Having heard your suggestion, it does presuppose the content of the consultation, which none of us know, because you're saying if there's overwhelming opposition to this, then the council will take that into account. You are assuming that the consultation will give that option. It doesn't always. I wanted to say that the community in this part of the borough has been overwhelmingly constructive for the past 15 years now on all the various sites that have come forward for development at Canada Water and elsewhere in the area on the peninsula. And if the consultation, and I think we should put a degree of trust in them. They are a very intelligent, a very switched-on community who, presented with options and given the pros and cons of each, will understand that. If the consultation could be amended to include at least one other site that is within the car park area, and include the option of rebuilding on the existing Seven Islands site, you could quite easily include information about new housing, about housing targets, about opportunity cost in terms of tens of millions of pounds, and you are therefore presenting the community with the options as it is. If you want this, you will lose this.
Presumably, Councillor Williams,
I don't see the problem, and then it will feel like a meaningful consultation rather than a done deal.
Presumably, Councillor Williams, people would be free to make those points within the context of the consultation that is being proposed.
Yeah, and absolutely, in all the detail
How will they know?
That's been discussed this evening. Well, yes, in the public consultation, we'll run through and say these are the sites that we considered. These were the pros and the cons for each of those. These is why we ruled them out.
That's not in the decision as it stands.
Well, exactly.
That's why I'm suggesting as a recommendation.
So just referring back to something I said earlier this evening, in hindsight, maybe we should have just published all of the full consultation materials with the IDM. The problem then is that going out to consultation before the decision's been ratified to go to consultation. That's a
but that could be a recommendation of ours.
But what I'd say is just going back to my earlier comment, and obviously it's for the committee to decide what your recommendations are. But for us to go out and say we've got a number, one or more, two or more preferred locations, we would be being very disingenuous, because as an administration we think, for the reasons I set out earlier, that this is the best one.
I understand.
Okay, I've got a nude next. I've got a nude. Okay.
I understand that, but I'm proposing that we, as a committee, separate from the cabinet member, could recommend this. We don't have to make our recommendation based on what he wants to do.
And you've heard my view that I have no in principle problem with the cabinet member and the council being completely open about their honest view of what they should or should not say is the preferred option. I have no problem whatsoever with them doing that, because I think that is the transparent thing to do. For them to go out to on a consultation to firmly believe that one site is it should be preferred, but to pretend that they are completely open to having the other sites is not transparent and open. I don't think that's transparent and open at all. So what I am saying in the wording of my recommendation, I hope makes clear, is that although they have a preferred site, they do that we absolutely have a commitment, a public commitment from the cabinet member, that should there be overwhelming public opposition to that particular set of circumstances, then that decision to have a preferred site would be reviewed. I think that's a sensible centre ground. I mean.
But then that has to be guaranteed to be an option in the consultation, and we've got no guarantee of that.
Anoud, then Johnson.
Thanks. I think the problem with the way you're framing it, Chair, I appreciate that you're actually saying the cabinet members should listen if people overwhelmingly object, but it's quite a negative way of framing it. And Lisa's point is that actually residents, they're not just NIMBYs, they're not just saying no to something. And I mean, Mark touched on some of the options that have been ruled out because we don't want to have a leisure centre closed for 3 to 5 years. We don't think we can fit everything we want. It's very what we say, the council. Well, actually, why not put that as an option to residents? Why not be honest in the consultation? Let's define what consultation means, because it's still not clear. Let's say we, the council, in conversations with British Land, have come up with this site. There are some other options. We have ruled out another site in our 45 acres because we think we'll lose council homes. We've ruled out investing in the existing site because we think that would take too long. Actually set those options out, give all the costs and the evidence, and then say to people, what do they think? And if, as you suggest, people overwhelmingly not come back negatively about something, but actually come back positively about an option, then the cabinet members should absolutely.
Well, I think the format of the consultation becomes inevitable if there is a firm view that there is a preferred site, and that's the situation that we find ourselves in. So it's disingenuous to say there are an open set of options.
I feel it will be a poignant time to remember that as part of that consultation period, you are able to feed in as much as you can, as much as you want. And it's important to state that, because we're giving off the impression that the consultation period, we won't be able to discuss certain ideas. So I think it's very important that we re-stress that, and if anything, that the consultation is, and that recommendation is just reassuring what already is council policy, which I believe is to listen to consultation.
They want to make decisions about the
through the
place
chair,
they live
please. Through the chair. Through the chair.
You don't know what consultation is. It's not just telling people.
Can I put what I said forward as a possible recommendation for other members of the committee to give their feedback on? Because
sorry, I've forgotten Rosie as well. Apologies.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, I suppose, and I hope I'm not kind of misinterpreting what's been said by various other members of the committee, but I suppose it feels like now what we're discussing is whether or not we have a consultation where we say this is the preferred site and just rely on people then adding in the extra comments bit, oh no, actually I'd like X, Y or Z, or whether we say there are actually three options, perhaps the council has a preference for one, but there are three options, which would you prefer? And it seems to me that it's only really a fair and open consultation if you actually state, 2, 3 or more options, as opposed to just relying on the fact that people might say no, I object, and then add in some comments. Because I mean, I suppose it's very easy to, that kind of relies on everyone phrasing their objections in exactly the same way. It relies on everyone being kind of equally aware of every possible objection that there might be. If you're relying on people giving quite, qualitative feedback at the end, I think while people should obviously be able to add points, it's very important that there are quite clearly more than one option for them to choose from, if that makes sense.
So, Lisa, did you have a wording for a recommendation that you wanted to put forward?
Yes, this committee recommends that the consultation be amended to include other sites within the footprint of the land where the council owns the freehold, and whether or not the existing Seven Islands can be, or whether the site can be used, demolished and rebuilt, and whether those options can be included in the consultation.
Okay, and my counter suggestion for a recommendation, and I'll just for clarity, I'll read it again, is in order to further reassure the affected residents regarding the consultation on the proposed new site for the Canada Water Leisure Centre, the Cabinet member should give a public commitment to review the Council's decision to have a preferred site should the consultation receive overwhelming public opposition. So that's my suggestion.
Can I add some offering other options in addition to solely the preferred option of the council?
Okay.
Because you've had a chance to write yours down and make it all neat and
well,
lovely.
I've been sat in the same room as you during the same period of time, so you could have written yours down just as I could have. Right, so don't blame me for the fact you haven't written yours down. It's not my fault.
I'll write it down now, Councillor.
Right.
Chair.
It's
Rebecca,
sort of a question for Mark, and potentially an amendment to yours. Is there, so to Johnson's point, and to Rosie's point about people can write in if they object and they want the site somewhere else, is there a question that says, or can we put in a question that says, would you prefer this site to be somewhere else, to make it easy and obvious for residents to be able to give other feedback?
So in the consultation, we're going to, as I mentioned, list the other sites, and we can consider, or need to think about it, we could consider putting in that option.
Okay.
But I think
But then
if I may just come back, would be.
Okay.
Can I, sorry,
okay.
Chair?
Okay.
Just to add to
go ahead.
For people who aren't on the committee, I did email the Chair in advance to try and say, could we get to a recommendation that was cross-party so we didn't just vote along party lines? And I think what you're suggesting and what Lisa's suggesting aren't necessarily a million miles away, so it would be really good if you were up for giving a bit of ground on your recommendation.
Well, I think that middle ground may come from what Councillor Lurie is saying, which is that the consultation should include an option, I don't know what you would say, a space, a place for people to make a suggestion for an alternative option. I think that that gets us to the Councillor Dale.
Yeah.
Can I add to the recommendations?
Finish what I was saying.
We'll come back to you.
Can I add to the recommendations what Mark has said that he is going to put in the consultation? But I think we should capture it here, which is that it will include detail about the options that have been rejected. If we're still framing this in terms of the preferred options, that the options that were considered but have been rejected are clearly spelt out. If you do that in combination with a question about do you have and would you prefer a different option or something like that, then you are effectively...
So you not only include an option and space for people to make alternative, but you also include detail and evidence about those options which have been rejected. Okay, well I think that
include the existing site as one of those options that's been rejected.
Yes, all options. So
and can I just on Catherine's point, can we not even bother mentioning Southwark Park and George's Fields, because I think that's a real red herring, and that just, why you'd even consider
Can we take that as
for 5
read,
seconds.
Mark,
No, that just says, oh look, aren't we wonderful, we thought something and didn't do it. Like, frankly, you never thought of it seriously.
Well, I think to be fair, we have to be honest and say these are the sites we consider and we ruled them out for these reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, talking of red herrings, I think this is a red herring.
No, but it's about how you frame a debate, actually.
Okay. Well, I think from the point of view of this committee right here, right now, this is so to try and bring these two positions together. I won't read it for a third time. Right? So it would be the wording that I've given twice already. It would also be to include an option in the consultation for people to make their own alternative suggestion, and it would also include we would recommend that the cabinet member include the detail about those options which were rejected, including the existing sites. Okay. So that is my suggestion for a recommendation. I'm now proposing that we move to the vote on that. Can I see?
Sorry, Chair, just before you do that, can we just check residents are happy with that as a way forward if there's anything obvious?
I'm not. I think we've done a pretty good job of hearing from residents tonight. I'm going to move to a vote on that. I'm going to move to a vote on that suggestion. Can I see a show of hands on those options?
Can we get an idea of what?
No. Look, I'm moving to a vote. So,
all right. Don't you worry. We will argue about the definition of overwhelming for much time to come, and we'll argue on your side.
Right. I think that's unanimous. There we go. Good. Thank you everybody for coming this evening. Ian, I know you've been patient.